Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. So today we are going to be doing UMGC work, and I hope you enjoy. Pilar Martinez. Let me make sure y'all watching. Pilar. Martinez, Associate Vice President of Change Management at Acceler ED, discusses here how her career took a new path after her realization that people drive change in organizations. Irrational and political resistance to change never fully dissipates. Even if you're successful in the early stages of transformation, you often don't win over the self-centered manager who is appalled when a reorganization encroaches on his turf, or the narrowly focused engineer who can't fathom why you want to spend so much time worrying about customers, or the stone-hearted finance executive who thinks empowering employees is ridiculous. John P. Cotter, in Leading Change. In this project, you will continue to develop change plans to increase employee retention in the Meet organization using Cotter's model. Previously, you addressed steps 1 through 4 of Cotter's model. For this project, you will work through steps 5 through 8 to produce your final recommendations. This means you will identify barriers to change and their impact and recommend ways to mitigate those risks. Next, you will propose immediate improvements that are easy to accomplish and can feel momentum for larger hurdles. Then you will consider the more expansive charges that will be required to implement the change plan. Finally, you will review your work over the first 7 steps of Cotter's model and propose your final recommendations for the 8th step, instituting the change throughout Meet org. The project is designed to be completed in 3 weeks. Please read the following scenario and begin step 1. Review Cotter's model. Over the past several weeks, the coalition has seen progress in its change efforts, raising a sense of urgency, developing a vision change, strategizing the change initiative, and recruiting a volunteer army. CEO Taylor Shaw has recognized the coalition's work towards the change implementation plan, but now needs the group to consider that barriers may arise due to natural resistance to change. The CEO calls a stand-up meeting for everyone and give updates. During her report, she notes some important thoughts on change management. The CEO calls a stand-up meeting for everyone to give updates. Meeting with CEO Taylor Shaw. The CEO speaking to you and the other members of the guiding coalition. Change even if it's in a positive direction, often come with mixed feelings and reactions. It takes courage to initiate change, and it takes courage to accept it. Unfortunately, it's never a simple process. So I'd like to encourage each of you to think about many perspectives people may hold when faced with the challenges we're envisioning. Why would someone or some like what we're proposing? Why would some like what we're proposing? Whereas others may be strongly opposed to it. Blah. If you've read over the HR turnover analysis, focus group summaries, you access denied. That's all I'm gonna say. Focus group summaries, you will have noted that, for example, the company's decision to move into the apps developments have affected many departments in individuals with variety of reactions. I appreciate all the work you're doing to get this change off the ground. Please feel free to come to me with any concerns, questions you may have as we address potential barriers. I'll be attending a leadership and integrity conference next week, but I'll join you all by teleconference. So she did it backwards. She left it open for them to have a conversation with them. But she did recorrect herself and took an integrity and leadership class herself. After leaving the meeting and grabbing a quick coffee from the company's kitchen, you return to your desk to consider the next steps in the change management process. Your work will be evaluated using the competencies listed below. 5.2, apply techniques to build resilience. I know what resilience means, but I just want to go by the book of what resilience means. I say resilience is like character, a positive type character trait. I know they're not going to say it like that. Hold up. It's pretty cool. I learned something different. Um, YouTube. Why you just now going live? Oh, I know what that was. Denied. Identify internal climate, cultural, technology, and leadership issues that might impact response to the external environment. Internal climate, like what's going on internal? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it medium? Culture. How's the culture there? 40% of white women are leaving. 63% of 63% were women, 40% were white, 10 of them were women. That's just weird to me. That's very weird. I don't 100,000,000.8 or 3 white women are in America. That's like every 10 white women, or up to 7 to 10 white women to one Black person, African American. When someone like a job qualifier for the job messes up, like it's just different. It's very different. And, you have the atmosphere, climate, you have the culture. The culture is, how is the culture doing? And that's what I said about the white women leaving. And since there's like 100 and some odd million, when 10 white women leave that are young, it's something that is lacking. If it was 10 Black women of a group, I would say the same exact stuff. But they want me to read the statistics, so I'm telling you how I feel. Technological and leadership issues that might impact, not good apps. Those apps aren't good. And not good leadership issues that might to external environment. They're externally. Demonstrate external. I know it's external. That's outside the environment. And the environment that is on the outside don't may impact negatively a response due to the issues affecting technological and leadership, culture, internal climate. Demonstrate entrepreneurial thinking. Construct a workforce plan to achieve a short and long-term organizational goals. Manage technology in support of a team and or organization goal. Apply strategies for influencing and leading change. Evaluate decisions. Apply critical thinking skills in decision making. Hold up. That's project one. Let me, I think I read this already. If it looks familiar, I don't need it. They talk about the statistics of the survey right here. New York, which is bam right here. Here's the federal state laws combat discrimination, which that hasn't been helping because if you look up here, it's been a negative response over the last 3 years. 20.7 negative response, negative 11.5 positive response. And it, we got culture right here, performance, culture, external factors. HR has identified three external factors that drive employee turnover or increase the cost and risk of turnover. Me or consultants are frequently poached by competing firms. That's why 10 white women left, because these young women, um, they wanted a better position. Clients often offer higher performing me or consultants permanent positions within their companies. Recruiting contractors or permanent employees with sufficient security clearance become more difficult as the market becomes more competitive. Factors. Me org values honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and courage. These values should guide all the external and internal business relationships, projects, and strategic decisions in the organization. However, HR has observed with other aspects of me or culture that could contribute to employee turnover. Employees express feedback is not valued and that there are not sufficient mechanisms in place for conveying feedback. Employees find that workflow processes are inefficient and can lead to confusion. Some employees report that recognition activities are disruptive. About a quarter of employees report having or more than 40 hours a week working, taking work home over weekends, and not feeling able to take breaks. Employees report dissatisfaction within ways information is to is disseminated throughout the company. Me org leadership positions continue to show little diversity, and there are increasing number of reports to HR related to diversity. HR has dedicated a shift in culture from consultants. Consultants with longer tenures at Me Org have preferred to travel to client headquarters and host client management at dinners and local social activities. Clients are now relying more on teleconferencing and are much more conscious of cost benefit analysis. The cost, well, that's how they put it, cost benefit analysis, and return the investment on their projects. Teleconferencing. Clients now tend to communicate through a variety of digital platforms rather than conventional telephone communication. HR, I already said that. Okay. These are basically what studies people have done. or surveys. Not trying to. You will continue to plan your changes using the Cotter's model. More specifically, you will map out your plans for Cotter Step 5-8. These steps are iterative. That is, they will ask you essentially to go back and forth between steps to strategize organizational changes and then address the intent and unintended consequences of those changes. Think about how changes to one part of an organization will affect other parts of an organization. Is key aspect to the internal system. I read this, I think. No, I didn't. Just looking at the pictures first. I'm so happy that they got pictures. What the hell? Okay. Organizational change is the movement of an organization from one state of affairs to another. A change in, let me see how many minutes I'm at. Okay, back to the story. Um, where's organizational change? Okay. A change in the environment often requires change within the organization operating within the environment. That's what they need. Change is in almost any aspects of a company organ operation can be met with resistance in different cultures. Can have different reactions to both the change and the means to promote the change. Better facilities, necessary change. Several steps can be taken that have been proved to lower the anxiety of employees and ease the transformational process. Often, the simple act of including employees in the change process can drastically reduce the opposition to new methods. In some organizations, this level of inclusion is not possible, and instead, organizations can result in a small number of opinion leaders to promote the benefits of coming changes. Why do organizations change? Since this is a long one, what I'm going to do is, since I'm already at the 30-minute mark, I'm going to read all of it, but then I'm going to get off of here and we're going to work on the next subject tomorrow. I'm going to spend, I have I'm going to spend 3 hours. Tomorrow is Monday. I'm going to spend 1 to 3 hours doing the rest of the work as much as I can get done. And then I'm going to write the teacher a day prior, which is tomorrow, the future, and tell him my past thinking future, and tell him, am I on the right? Matter of fact, I do that right now. Where am I at? Why do organizations change? Organization change can take many forms. It may involve a change in a company's structure, strategies, policies, procedures, technology, or culture. The change may be planned years in advance or may be forced on an organization because of shift in the environment. Organizational change can be radical and swiftly alter alter the way the organization operates, or it may be incremental and slow. In any case, regarding of the type, change involves letting go of the old ways work has been done and adjusting to new ways. Therefore, fundamentally, it is a process that involves effective people management. Managers often find themselves faced with the need to manage organizational change effectively. Often, the planning process reveals the need for the new and improved strategy, which is then often reflected in changes to tactical and operational plans. Creating a new organizational design or altering the existing design entails the changes. Effective decision making, a leadership task, takes into account the change management implications of decisions, planning for the need to manage the implementation of decisions. Finally, any updates to controlling systems and processes will potentially involve changes to employees' assigned tasks and performance assessments, which will require aptitude change management skills to implement. So let's break this down. They have a need to manage organizational change. The planning process will does reveal a new or improved strategy, which reflected to tactical and operational plans. Altering the existing design may affect one employee or the entire organization. Organizational change is often a response to changes in their environment. For example, agencies monitor workplace demographics such as U.S. Department of Labor and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development have reported that the average age of the U.S. workforce will increase as a baby boom generation nears retirement age, and the number of younger workers are insufficient to fill the gap. What does it mean for companies? Organizations may realize that as the workplace get older, the types of benefits of workers prefer may change. Arrangements such as flexible work hours and job sharing may become more popular as employees remain in the workforce even after retirement. It also is it is also possible that employees who are unhappy with their current work situation will choose to retire, result in a sudden loss of valuable knowledge and expertise in organizations. Therefore, organizations will have to devise strategies to retain their employees and plan for their retirement. Finally, a critical issue is finding ways of dealing with age related stereotypes, which act as barriers in the retention of these employees. Sometimes change is motivated by rapid developments in technology. Moore's Law by Gordon Moore, co founder of Intel for intelligence, Intel processors, dictates that the overall complexity of computers will double every 18 months with no increase in costs. Such innovation is motivating corporations to change their technology rapidly. Sometimes technology produces such profound developments that companies struggle to adapt. When music CDs were first produced and introduced in the 1980s, they were in the 1980s CDs? What? I don't believe that. The late 1980s, maybe? I didn't get a CD. I got like a tape. And that was like in 95. Anyway, I guess I'm losing track. They were substantially more appealing to the than the traditional LP. Record companies were easily able to double prices, even though the producing CD costs a fraction of what it costs to produce an LP. For decades, record producing companies benefited from the status quo. Yet, peer to peer file sharing through software such as Napster and Kaiser threatened the core of their business companies. In the music industry, found themselves completely unprepared for such disruptive technological. That's like LimeWire. I think I used Napster before. Their first response was to sue the users of file sharing software. They also kept looking for technology that would make it impossible to copy a CD or DVD, um, which is yet to emerge. Until Apple iTunes came out with a new way to sell music online, it was doubtful that consumers would ever be willing to pay for music that was otherwise available for free, albeit illegal so. Electromechanical in the ninth. Whoa, let me go back. 1900s. I guess that's brine or something. Braille, whatever it's called. Relay, 1940. That's when the first AI, no, 1950, the vacuum tube, when it was a conception. This was early 1900s, was during the Nikola Tesla time. I think Nikola Tesla died before the 1900s. Ray Kurtz explains Moore law from integrated circuits to earlier transistors. Transistors. You know what a transistor is? Do anyone know what a transistor is? A transistor is a what's in all of our technology. It turns off your computer. It's the click, it's the engine for your computer. Globalization is another threat and opportunity for organizations. Did I? Okay. Is another threat and opportunity for organizations depending on their ability to adapt to it. Because of differences in national economics or economies and standards of living from one country to another, organizations in developed countries are finding that it's often cheaper to produce goods and deliver services in less developed countries. This has led many companies to outsource offshore their manufacturing operations to companies such as China and Mexico. And China and Mexico took advantage. Knowledge work was thought to be, just think, I want y'all to think about something. If a Democrat was in office, where do you think we would be right now? People pages, Dan Bongino page got taken away from YouTube during the Biden administration. So, do you think they would be cooperating with the United States of America if he was in office? I don't think Mexico would cooperate with the United States if it was not Trump. It could be anyone but Trump. But now that we have Trump, we must cooperate. That is the kind of sense I get from that situation. Same with China. China and Mexico have a common interest. Do y'all remember when y'all? I thought they were shapeshifting. I thought they were. Think about how many real live non-benevolent aliens came through that border. You never heard of Roswell? Like, how many actually terroristic, like they say, aliens came through that border? They didn't label them that for. They were saying that Asians were coming up through the Mexico border. And I laughed. I said, how are they are they shapeshift? I didn't understand that they were catching boats. There's plenty other ways. But it's like they took off the hinge. They took off every government building. They just took off the roof to every governmental building. And I am so appalled because their influence caused sleepers to be right in front of the White House. Now imagine it today. They wouldn't have did nothing. They were actually there to protect him. Until a Republican get into office, until it would be a fight. I have reason to believe that they were going to take over the White House. And there was nothing, there's only a limited, there's a lot of speculation, but why would they sleep feet away from a government building? Why do we need to watch you guys? You did it with Burien, you did it, Burien, Washington. They slept right next to The police station, they watched the police go in and out and in and out. They were ready to pop. They were ready to get stuff popping soon, with or without Biden. They were told to do this shit. Nobody just sleeps next to a government building for protection. And why do y'all keep using drugs and killing each other on sacred ground? Why is people in Seattle hitting people? In the 1990s, knowledge work was thought to be safe from outsourcing, but the 21st century, we're also seeing many service operations move to places with lower wages. For example, many companies have outsourced software development to India, with Indian companies such as Wilpo and Infosys emerging as global giants. Given these changes, understanding how to manage a global workforce is a necessity. India, I don't know much. I know India president. I know Indian people, and they're pretty cool people. But I know the Indian prime minister or whatever you call him, he I don't think he liked Trump. In one territory in the Middle East, did y'all remember what they did? I don't know if this was India or not, that they took everybody's cell phone. It was sleeping, it was hibernating, and they were all at the grocery store in random places. They pressed the button and the phones blew up. And they had deaths, I think, or very serious injuries to that. They all blew up sequential, numerical order. Many companies realize that outsourcing forces them to operate in an institutional environment that is radically different from what they are used to at home. Changes in marketing conditions. Changes may also create internal changes as companies struggle to adjust. For example, demand for air travel was reduced after September 11th, 2001, after the terrorist attacks. I don't know why terrorists came to mind. After the terrorist attacks, I have to write this for later. What is it? Okay. Nazi Germany. What happened to the Jews? Carried out a state-sponsored systematic program to eliminate the Jewish population of Europe. This does not happen all at once. It was gradual escalation from discrimination to government mass murder. The New Rung Law, after after immediately taking power, Nazis began isolating Jews from the German society, stripped Jews from their citizenship, and banned them from marrying non-Jews. Jewish businesses were boycotted, and Jewish doctors, lawyers, and teachers were fired. This is freaking crazy. They forced Jews into ghettos, overcrowded, walled off sections of cities with little food or medicine, concentrate the population for easy transport. Conditions were so poor that hundreds of thousands died from starvation and disease. The final solution, it shifted from persecution to extermination, 1941 and 45. Mobile killing units, special squads followed Germany army into the Soviet Union, conducting mass shooting of Jewish communities. The Nazi-built killing centers specifically designed for mass murder, such as, I can't pronounce that. Most victims were killed in gas chambers immediately upon arrival. By the time the war ended, 6 million Jews, two-thirds of Europe's Jewish population, had been murdered. While Jews, Nazi also murdered millions of others: Romans, Sinti people, people with disabilities, Soviet prisoners of war, and LGBTQ individuals. Well, we both know that they have their rights here. We all know that. But look at their behavior. I mean, like, out of 100 LGBT% Q community, like, it's a heightened number of them that act violent when they don't get their way. Now, there's some that are victims, and I hated seeing that girl or transgender woman with a black eye. I don't hate your whatever you are. I understand and can empathize with you because I don't know. I know what it's like to not be able to relate. But, however, your behavior, the ones that I've ran into, has been atheists. Therefore, I cannot be around atheists. At the same time, the widespread use of the internet to book plane travel made it possible to compare airline prices more efficiently and easily, encouraging airlines to complete or compete primary based on costs. The strategy seemed to have backfired when coupled with dramatic increases of the cost of fuel that occurred in the beginning of 2004. As a result, by the mid 2008, airlines were cutting back on amenities that had formerly been taken for granted for decades, such as the price of meals, beverages, and checking luggage. Dang, next you're gonna be sitting up there having to buy air. Oops, I forgot we got oxygen and tanks and CVS. Next is gonna be like, there's gonna be an air charge. There's gonna be a freaking air tax. You're breathing in Earth's air. I think I ought to tax you. I mean, who taxed tampons? Why did Obama tax tampons for women? Like, are you? How? I don't understand that. Do y'all? Because that's a natural thing. For 7 days or however, I don't care. Ugh. Your hormones, your body chemistry changing. Something that only the moon, only the alignment of the stars and the galaxies, only the universe within yourself can sit up there and do. Something within you, your biological clock, as a woman, as a goddess, as a life bringer, you're a creator of life, therefore goddess. You create as a goddess life for eternal, and yet we disregard that. We disregard it, man. It's just crazy, man. Some women take it for granted. Some people whole life they use their children as paychecks. They only have babies because they want money. I wish I could have still been successful and had a happy life. But since that wasn't for me, that wasn't God's plan for me, um, I'm okay with that. How does change in the environment create change within the organization? Environmental change does not automatically change how business is done. Whether an organization changes or not in response to environmental changes and threats, depending on the decision makers' reactions to what is happening in the environment. It is natural for small startup companies, for once small startup companies to grow if they become successful. An example of growth in evolution is Wilmer Brothers Brewing Company, which started as two brothers brewed beer in their garage and became the 11th largest brewery in the U.S. The growth happened as the popularity of the key product, Hewitt Benzene, grew in popularity, and the company had to expand to meet demand. In 2007, Wilmer Brothers merged with Red Hook Ale Brewery. Anheuser-Busch continues to have a minority stake in both companies. So while 50% of all new small businesses fail in their first year, those that often evolve into large, complex, or those that succeed often evolve into large, complex organizations over time. 1984. Is that 1984? Yeah, Wilmer Brothers, largest brewery in the United States. Poor performance. Change can also occur if a company is performing at poorly and there is perceived threat from the environment. In fact, poorly performing companies often find it easier to change compared with successful companies. Why? High performance actually leads to overconfidence and inertia. As a result, successful companies often keep doing what made them successful in the first place. So, what that is saying is successful companies will often keep doing what made them successful, but that's not always good. For example, Polaroid was the number one producer of instant filtering cameras in 1994. Less than a decade later, the company filed for bankruptcy. Sorry, y'all. Have Yeah, I didn't have my Red Bull today. Unable to adapt to the rapid advances in 1 hour photo development and digital photography technologies that were sweeping the market. For example, successful companies that manage to change have special practices in place to keep the organization open for changes or open. For example, the Finnish cell phone maker Nokia finds that it is important to periodically change perspective of key decision makers. For this purpose, they rotate heads of business into different posts to give them a fresh perspective. In addition to the success of the business, change in companies' upper level management is a motivator for change at the organizational level. Research shows that the long tenured CEOs are unlikely to change their formula for success. Instead, new CEOs and top management teams create change in a company's culture. Changing an organization is often essential for a company to remain competitive. Failure to change may influence the ability of a company to survive, yet employees do not always welcome changes in methods. According to a 2007 survey conducted by the Society for Human Resource Management, employee resistance to change is one of the top reasons change efforts fail. In fact, reactions to organizational change may range from resistance to compliance to enthusiastic support of the change, with the latter being exception rather than the norm. Active resistance is the most negative reaction to a proposed change attempt. Those who engage in active resistance may sabotage the change effort and be outspoken objectors to the new procedures. Passive resistance involve being disturbed by changes without necessarily voicing these options. Instead of passive, resistors may dislike the change quietly, feel stressed and unhappy, even look for a new job without necessarily bringing their concerns to the attention of decision makers. Compliance involves going along with proposed changes with little enthusiasm. Enthusiastic support defends defending the new way and actually encouraging others to give support to the change effort as well. To be successful, any change attempt will need to overcome resistance on the part of employees to avoid lost time and energy, as well as an inability to on the part of the organization to adapt to the changes in the environment and make its operations more efficient. How do you do that? Research showed that when people react negatively to organizational change, they experience negative emotions, use sick time more often, more likely to voluntarily leave the company. These negative effects can present even when proposed change clearly offers benefits and advantage over the status quo. The following is a dramatic example of how resistance to change may prevent improvements to the status quo. Have you ever wondered why keyboards we use are shaped the way they are? The query keyboard named after its first six letters in the top row. It's pretty cool. I never saw that. Was actually engineered to slow us down. When the typewriter was invented in the 19th century, the first prototypes on the keyboard was jammed if the keys right next to each other were hit at the same time. Therefore, it was important for the manufacturers to slow typists down. I've used a typewriter before. I'm going to buy a typewriter. I want to buy a typewriter. I don't know where the hell I'm going to sit it, but or even if I use it. But I just want to buy. I don't even know they sell it no more. I don't even think they sell the ink to it no more. They have to be specially made. They achieved this objective by putting the most commonly used letters on to the left. Hold on. I'm trying to study this. Left side and scattering the most frequently used letters all over the keyboard. Later, the issue of the letters being stuck was resolved. In fact, an alternative to the query developed in the 1930s by educational psychologist Auguste Dubrock provides a much more efficient design and allows individuals to double traditional typing speeds. Yet the Dubrock keyboard never gained wide acceptance as many people resisted to the change. Teachers and typists resisted to it. They would lose their specialized knowledge. Manufacturers resisted due to the cost inherent in making the switch and initial efficiencies to the learning curve. In short, the best idea does not necessarily win, and changing people requires understanding why they resist. The rock keyboard is more efficient alternative to keyboard design. However, due to the resistance from typists, teachers, manufacturers, salespeople, a switch never occurred. I want to see how that looks. Very different. What would pound be? Where's pound? I don't even see pound on there. Pound is always three. Star, eight. Okay. They changed three. Why do people resist change? Disruptive habits. People often resist change for the simple reason that changes disrupt our habits. When you hop into your car for your morning commute, do you think about how you are driving? Most of the time, probably not, because driving generally becomes an automatic activity after a while. You may sometimes even realize that you have reached your destination without noticing the roads you have used or consciously thought about of your body movements. Now imagine you drive for a living, and even though you are used to driving an automatic car, you are forced to use a stick shift. You can most likely figure out how to drive a stick, but it will take time. Until you figure it out, you cannot drive on autopilot. This loss of a familiar habit can make you feel clumsy. You may even feel that your competence as a driver is threatened. For this simple reason, people sometimes outspoken are sometimes surprisingly outspoken when confronted with a simple change, such as updating a newer version of a particular software or changing their voicemail system. Some people are more resistant to change than others. Research show that people who have a positive self-concept are better at coping with change. Probably because those who have high self-esteem may feel that whatever the changes are, they are likely to adjust to it well and be successful in the new system. People with a more positive self-concept and those who are more optimistic may also view change as an opportunity to shine as opposed to a threat. Finally, risk tolerance is another predictor of how resistant someone will be to stress. For people who are risk avoidant, um, the possibility of a change in technology or structure may be more threatening. Change inevitably brings feelings of uncertainty. You have heard that your company is merging with another. Sudden change is often turbulent, and it is often unclear what is going to happen to each individual. Some potential positions may be eliminated. Some people may see a change in their jobs. Things may get better or they may get worse. The feeling that the future is unclear is enough to create stress for people because it leads to a sense of lost control. People also resist change when they feel their performance might be affected under the new system. People who are experts to jobs may be less welcoming to change because they may be unsure whether their success would last under the new system. Studies show that people who feel they can perform well under the new system are more likely to be committed to the proposed change, while those who have never or lower confidence in their ability to perform after changes are less committed. It would be too simplistic to argue that people all resist to change regardless of its form. In fact, people tend to be more welcoming of change that is favorable to them on a personal level, such as giving them more power over others or providing bigger and nicer offices. Researchers show that commitment to change is highest when proposed changes affect the work unit with a low impact on how individual jobs are performed. Any change effort should be considered with the context of all other changes that are introduced in a company. Does a company have a history of making short-lived changes? If the company structure went from functional to product-based to geographic to matrix within the past 5 years, and the top management is in the process of going back to a functional structure again, a certain level of resistance is to be expected. I know I'm not reading what I said. A certain level of resistance is to be expected because employees are likely to be fatigued as a result of constant changes. Moreover, the lack of history of successful changes may cause people to feel skeptical towards newly planned changes. Therefore, considering the history of changes in the company is important to understand why people resist. Another question is, how big is the planned change? Another reason people may resist change is that change may affect their power and influence in the organization. Imagine that your company has moved to a more team based structure. turning supervisors into team leaders. In the old structure, supervisors were in charge of hiring and firing all of those reporting to them. Under this new system, this power is given to the team. Instead of monitoring the progress that the team is making towards a goal, the job of a team leader is to provide support and mentoring to the team in general to ensure the team has access to all resources to be effective. Given the loss in prestige and status of the new structure, some supervisors may reduce or resist the proposed changes, even if it's better for the organization to operate around teams. In summary, there are many reasons individuals resist change, which may prevent an organization from making important changes. Resistance to change may be a positive force from some instances. In fact, resistance to change is valuable feedback. No Red Bull make Kimberly go something something. Anyway, do they do they believe that the new system would not work? If so, why not? By listening to people and incorporating their suggestions into the change or efforts, it is possible to make a more effective change. Some of the company's most committed employees may be the most vocal opponents of a change effort. They may fear that the organization they feel such a strong attachment to is being threatened by a planned change or effort, and the change will ultimately hurt the company. In contrast, people who have less loyalty to the organization may comply with the proposed changes um, let's see, simply because they do not care enough about the fate of the company to oppose the changes. As a result, when dealing with those who resist change, it's important to avoid blaming them for lack of loyalty. Organization change. What did that last part say? Organizations change in response to changes in the environment, in response to the way decision makers interpret these changes. When it comes to organizational change, one of the biggest obstacles is resistance to change. People may resist change because change disrupts in habits, conflicts with certain personal types, causes and fears of failure, and have potential negative impacts. Can result in potential loss of power, and when done frequently, can exhaust the employee. I know I didn't, and I did. I closed it. I'll leave this one open for tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, so that is my show for today. I sat up there and I went online and I read. I read as much as I could for tonight. Still ahead by a day and a half, but I want to kind of rev it up a little bit. Some people are a week ahead of me. Some people are 2 weeks ahead of me. It's okay. I don't care. What I care about is my race. He has to do it by the syllabus. And that's why he regulates it by the syllabus. Thank you.